to be used of God, to sing, to speak, to pray, to be used of God, to show someone the way. I long so much to feel the touch of God's consuming fire, to be used of God is my desire.
My desire to be like Jesus. My desire to be like Him. His power o'ertake me. His love o'erwhelm me in word or deed, to be like Him, to be like Jesus, to be like Jesus. All I ask, to be like Him, all through life's journey, from earth to glory. All I ask, to be like Him. He lifted up the fallen man. He gave the world a helping hand. His heart was touched each time He saw a soul in need, displaying kindness everywhere. Mercy and love was His to share, and like this man of Galilee, I want to be like Jesus, to be like Jesus. All I ask, to be like Him, all through life's journey, from earth to glory. All I ask, to be like Him. All I ask, to be like Him. So I'm going to live the way He wants me to live. I'm going to give until there's just no more to give. I'm going to love
remove not the ancient landmarks. And I want to read first from Psalm 16. Psalm 16. I want to read just a couple of verses there. And then I've got about 6 other verses that I want to read different places. And it may be a little hard for you to follow, but I'll give the references. You may want to write them down if you can't follow them that quickly. But let's begin Psalm 16, verse 5. The Lord is the portion of mine inheritance and of my lot, and of my cup. Thou maintainest my lot. The lines are fallen unto me in pleasant places. Yea, I have a goodly heritage. Then I would like to read about 6 verses from different places. The first is from Deuteronomy chapter 19 and verse 14, where God is giving the command through Moses, Thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which they of old time have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land that the Lord God giveth thee to possess it. Then from the same book, Deuteronomy 27 and verse 17, Cursed be he that removeth his neighbor's landmark. And all the people said, Amen. Then from Proverbs, a couple of verses, Proverbs 22 and verse 28, Remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. Proverbs 23 and verse 10, almost the same words, Remove not the old landmark. Then from Job chapter 24 and verse 2, there is this statement, Some remove the landmarks. And then finally from Hosea chapter 5 verse 10, The princes of Judah were like them that remove the bound. Therefore will I pour out my wrath upon them like water. Shall we bow our hearts for a moment of prayer? Our Father, we do praise Thee for these precious days together. Thank You for the blessing of the Lord that maketh rich and addeth no sorrow with it. Thank You for the privilege of fellowship with our brothers and sisters in the Lord, of like precious faith. Thank You for the good heritage that You've given us. Truly we can say the lines are fallen to us in pleasant places. Yea, we have a goodly heritage, and we want to be faithful to that inheritance that has been passed down to us, that we might pass it on to a succeeding generation if Thou shouldst tarry. And now as we fellowship around the Word, make Your Word precious to our heart. Make it a guide for our future. Make it an anchor to our soul, and make it a guide to our tomorrows. Bless this truth to our good and Thy glory, and for all that Thou art pleased to do for us, we'll give Thee praise. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Several of the words in our scripture reading tonight, the word landmark, the word lot, and even the lines are fallen unto us in pleasant places. All of those are agricultural and surveyors' terms. I don't know much about surveying and the surveyor's chain and the line and the stakes and all that goes with it. But ancient Israel was primarily an agricultural land. And the land was divided out from various landmarks that God Himself planted and specified to be the boundaries between the various tribes. If a man in Israel was interested in farming, having land to till, those that were interested in farming would gather in the marketplace, where one man would have a bag, and in this bag would be many pebbles, stones, and each stone would have a mark on it, a number on it. And if you wanted to farm, you would be there in this circle of people, and there would be a little boy that would reach into that bag and pull out a pebble or stone that had a number on it and bring it over to you and give it to you. And that number signified which plot of land was yours for farming. And David was making reference to that when he said, "The lines are fallen unto me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage." He liked the plot of land that was his, and he was perfectly satisfied with that which God in his good providence had given him. And I want to bear you good news and tell you, I'm mighty pleased with the line that the Lord stretched out and marked off a boundary for me to have a little place to till and scratch in the soil and a farm and try to raise some produce for the Lord. I can say I have a goodly heritage tonight, and I'm mighty pleased with what God has sent my direction. But friend, I'm afraid we're living in a day when a lot of people aren't that appreciative of the heritage that is theirs. And a lot of people are selling out for another piece of property and are missing what God really has for them in this present life. And I want to deal with that a little bit tonight by the help of the Lord. I'd like to note, first of all, that there are some blatant attacks on the landmarks. And there are several truths that I would regard as landmark truths. If you move them, it throws your whole theological structure out of kilter. And they are very basic. Right in our day, the belief in the supernatural, of course, is called into question. Divine revelation, whether this is the book of God or not. The group of people that started by doubting holy standards and decide that some things were now all right that our fathers used to say were not all right, they are no longer debating whether it's all right for a woman to cut their hair or for us to put on jewelry or a lot of other things. Now they're unsure if this is even the inspired, inerrant Word of God. And friend, once you start down that direction, there's no place to turn around. You just keep going on and on and on till you have absolutely nothing to believe in. And this book is under attack tonight because they started down a wrong road. The virgin birth of Christ. You know, the real battle against this Bible centers in Genesis chapter 1 and Matthew chapter 1. The creation on the one hand and the virgin birth on the other. You know, there's some commentaries that aren't really safe to have in your libraries. William Barclay doesn't believe in the word virgin birth of Jesus. He says the church has never required that we do. But friend, that's a very dangerous departure from orthodoxy. And they're under attack tonight. And then holy traditions. Did you know the Bible makes some reference of holding to the traditions of the fathers? I hear people say, well, that's just tradition. Well, so be it. There's some traditions that are worth holding on to by the grace of God. It's in vogue today to demur against some things just because they bear the seal of antiquity. Progress in some theological circles has come to mean reckless abandonment of everything that age has sanctified. But friend, I'm glad the old way is the way that's got people into the city. And I just don't trust the new way. I'm afraid it won't take us where we're really wanting to go. And I'm not willing to risk my soul that direction. So whether it's the deity of Christ or the inerrancy of the Word or separation from the world and sacred spiritual standards, whichever it is, I'm unwilling to let them go. Many years ago in the Crimea, I think that is now a part of the territory that is Russia, an unusual thing happened in a battle. The infantry was trying to take a certain mountain, and some way the flag bearers got way ahead of the infantry and got way up the mountain. But the infantry was having difficulty taking the mountain, and it looked like they wouldn't be able to. So the cry went up to the flag bearers, "Bring the colors back down! Bring the colors back down!" But when the captain heard it, he shouted back and said, "No! Bring the army up to the colors!" We're living in a day when a lot of people are saying, "Bring the standards down. Bring the standards down where we are." But the captain of our salvation says, "No! Bring the army up to the standards." That's where he wants us to come. And even though they're under attack and being abandoned by many, I'm glad I still believe in the old-fashioned way. Blessed be the Lord. I know that we all understand what landmarks are. It can be a tree, it can be an old building, it can be a stream, lots of things. And we use the word accommodatively. We talk about landmark cases from the Supreme Court. It's cases that point back to this case to determine some other. And I believe there are various areas that God uses as points to hold us steady and keep us on course all the way into the city. There were three, in Bible times, there were three principal purposes for the landmarks. And I want to mention those tonight. The first and natural use of the landmark was simply to mark boundaries. On this side of the line was your property. On that side of the line, somebody else's. It was simply to mark boundaries. And God, in his infinite wisdom and his infinite mercy, has laid out some lines and drawn some boundaries that you and I dare not trespass. If we get outside those boundaries, we're off our own property. We're on somebody else's territory where we don't belong. Now I want to submit tonight that there are 5 kinds of boundaries that we dare not trespass. Number 1, there are some intellectual boundaries that we dare not cross over. In other words, I want to say that there are some knowledges, there are some facts we're just as well off, if not better off, to be ignorant of. Let's don't read the writings of unbelievers. You don't save anyone by what you don't believe. You save people by what you do believe. And let's center on the truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Nobody gets blessed about what they don't believe. I would just give one exception to that. I got blessed reading Bertram Russell one time. I said, "Bless God, I don't believe a word you're saying." He got to me too late. But friend, we're better off to read selectively and just be ignorant about some things. There's some intellectual boundaries, whether it's evil or wickedness or unbelief or false doctrine. We're better off not to major on it. Number 2, there are some moral boundaries we dare not trespass. The Decalogue, the 10 Commandments, are 80% negative. Now that's not very popular these days to be negative. But the Lord knew human nature better than anybody else does. And he knew we needed the thou shalt nots. And you can't trespass God's moral boundaries without suffering spiritual loss. And the thing that's in vogue today is to say, "Yea, hath God said." And I know where that question was first raised. The first question in the Bible is a questioning God's authority to say what's right and what's wrong. But I want to say his authority still stands. We don't break God's law. We break ourselves on top of God's law. God's law will stand when we're gone and buried. And it doesn't matter if everybody starts doing it or believing it, it doesn't change what God says. Truth is not determined by taking a poll. Truth is determined by what the book says and what the Word of God says. Abortion is still murder no matter how we change the label. And friend, we can't afford to trifle with these things that have begun to be accepted. Friend, things are being accepted today. You can hardly imagine they're being accepted. We can get so concerned about taking care of our animals, but we can murder our babies 1.33 million a year with no qualms of conscience. There's something morally bent out of shape with a society that can do it and allow it. There are moral boundaries we dare not trespass. And even though some churches are now ordaining homosexuals, it's still an abomination in the eyes of God, and it fills up the cup of iniquity and is going to bring judgment on America. Thirdly, there are doctrinal boundaries we dare not trespass. The fundamental doctrines of justification by faith and sanctification must ever be the hallmark of the Pilgrim Holiness Church. And friend, I'm afraid that there's a lack of real emphasis on holiness preaching. Preaching an experience that you can know. Preaching that the witness of the Spirit will come to witness to your own heart that you've met the conditions and the work is real in your heart. I like to tell people, don't quit seeking till the witness comes. Friend, there'll be enough battles till you're going to need the witness. You're going to need to know that it's true. And friend, I also want to emphasize, let's not dabble in false doctrines. Let's not be overly informed. I'm not saying we should have no knowledge at all. But while I was in Bible school, I guess this is why I feel this so keenly on my heart. One of my fellow students, fellow ministers, I was a student, he was a student. He had a brother that had gotten taken up with a false doctrine. And this precious young man, holiness young man, said, I'm going to study their doctrine so I can win my brother back out of that false doctrine. You probably already know the rest of the story. He didn't win his brother, but we lost him because he began majoring on false doctrine rather than on the truth that we know to be biblical doctrine. And friend, holiness must ever be central. I don't really have time to do this, but I can't hardly leave it out tonight. Those who study the history of churches and denominations tell us this, that we first lose the experience of holiness, then we lose the standard of holiness, and then we lose the doctrine of holiness. Many a group still has the doctrine written in their manuals, but they've long since left the standard and lost the experience. So friend, let's major on truth. And someone else has said that God has so constructed the human personality that you cannot indefinitely believe one way and live another way. You're either going to change the way you live or change the way you believe. Sadly, most people change the way they believe and keep on living just like they've been living. But friend, it means something to have the doctrine and live the doctrine and get them right together till your heart is united in the holy way of God. Let's not trespass the doctrines that God has given for us. And then there's not only the doctrinal boundaries, but there's spiritual boundaries. I wish I had time to dwell on this tonight. We need to be sure that our people are pressed into the experience of holiness. I mentioned a week ago Wednesday night in the message at IHC that again those that study holiness works and other groups tell us that backsliding starts in the third generation. The first generation has the fire and the glow and the glory to such an extent that the next generation goes along with it. But by the time the third generation comes along, there's been enough cooling off and lukewarmness and departure from the early fire that it's easy for the third generation to leave the tenets of the gospel and go a different way. But I believe the Lord showed me one time what would keep that from happening. If we really get our people sanctified, that won't happen. I'm a fourth generation Christian tonight, and I believe the experience of holiness is as real to me as it was to my great-grandfather, because he helped me stay put till it really took place in my heart. Let's not trespass the doctrine. Old Elijah was about to leave, and he was concerned about how things would be, and he said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall give thee." And Elisha said, "Elijah, I want the same thing you've got, but I'd just like to have twice as much of it." Wouldn't you like to have a group of people like that to preach to for 10 days? But do you remember what Elijah said to him? He said, "Thou hast asked a hard thing. Thou hast asked a hard thing." I heard Brother Richard Beckham preach on that, and he said it's a hard thing to get this truth passed from one generation to the next. I believe it is, friend. I believe it is. I believe it takes all the schools can do and all the homes can do and all the churches can do. But that's our hope, friend, is to get this truth passed to the succeeding generation. Let's not trespass the doctrines. And then if I had time, I'd say let's not trespass the boundaries of the Bible standards that God has handed down to us from a former generation. Did you know that modernism is not really too modern? A long time ago, there was an old fellow preaching modernism way back in the Old Testament. His name was Jeroboam. And he said to the people, "It's too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. It's far too much to expect you to go clear up to Jerusalem. Let's have a religion of convenience. Let's make an altar here at Dan and one at Bethel, and it'll be a lot easier to really have our church services. Too much for you to go to Jerusalem." And I hear people suggesting that today. It's too much to expect young people to go the old-fashioned way. I tell you, when the experience is real, it's not too much at all. There's a delight. You can say, "I delight to do thy will, O God." Thank God it's not a set of trappings forced on you. It's something from the heart that you enjoy because you're in love with Jesus Christ. Blessed be his holy name. So the first purpose of the landmarks was to mark boundaries. The second purpose of the landmarks was to determine ownership. Every Israelite was to be a landowner. Every Israelite, that is, except the Levites. And the landmark might be a natural boundary. It might be a tree. It might be a creek or a river. It might be a deeper ditch. It might be a stone. It might even be a double-plowed furrow between the fields that just marked the line. And it signified ownership. On this side was yours. On that side was somebody else's. And friend, the way you live and the way I live reveals who we belong to, whose property we really are. You know, in the town where we lived pastoring for 6 years, they had the state university there, University of Missouri, Columbia. There were people in that university literally from around the world. A lot of them, like from Europe, France, Spain, Italy, they looked enough like Americans you didn't really notice that much difference. But I tell you, those ladies from India and Pakistan, and some of those with their long flowing robes that went clear to the feet, and some of them had funny little marks on their forehead. You knew at a glance they were from another country. They gave their allegiance to another flag and another government. And friend, I just think it's mighty wonderful when people pick you out once in a while and say, you're a Christian, aren't you? You must be a holiness person, aren't you? They can tell we're giving allegiance to another master, another country, and we're marching to the drum beats of another leader. Praise God forever. It doesn't make me feel bad at all. I just have to swallow a little pride once in a while. It's not the wrong kind of pride, of course. I like that story that Vance Havner told. You probably heard him tell it or read it in his book. He tells about this little group of boys that were marching along, and everybody was in step but one little boy. And they got to investigating why he wasn't in step, and they found out he had a transistor radio under his coat. He was marching to music that came from 100 miles away. And the world may wonder, well, why aren't we in step? Why don't we get with it? Let's just let them know we're marching to music that comes from another country. We're tuned into another frequency. It signifies ownership. We belong to Jesus. Glory be to God. And we're mighty happy about it. Blessed be the Lord. The landmarks signified ownership. The third purpose and the final purpose that I want to mention that the landmarks filled, not only did they mark a boundary and signify ownership, but they also were to ensure an inheritance. The land in those days was to be passed down from generation to generation. And to lose one's inheritance was a very serious thing. The Bible gives us some examples. Some who were careless with their inheritance, and others that were very careful. Esau is known as a profane person because he sold his birthright for one morsel of meat. He sold her out just like that. And I, of course, don't know your people and your churches at large. But as I move across this country and move among holiness people, I find there's many a person selling out. I mean, they had the best holiness heritage you could imagine. Attended our major holiness Bible schools, raised in a holiness parsonage, but they've sold out. And the Bible says that Esau found no place of repentance. He never got back what he lost, though he sought it carefully with tears. That's a sad commentary. I don't like to read about Esau. But on the other hand, there's a man in the Old Testament whose name signifies sterling character. That name is Naboth. Naboth. Ahab came one day and he had been looking over Naboth's vineyard. Ahab's a good type of the devil. And I'd like you to know that old Satan's been looking over your vineyard too. Don't you ever doubt it. Brother Gray, he's looking over this vineyard. He's looking it over. And he has a proposition to offer. He had one for Naboth. He said, Brother Naboth, I'd like to have your vineyard. It's close by my castle here. And Naboth, I'm going to give you two choices. You can just go take it either way you want. He said, either I'll give you another vineyard that's better than this one. Doesn't that sound like the devil? Or I'll pay you its value in money. Either one. And you know, the old devil does get people looking across the fence once in a while, and my, it looks so nice over there, and they don't have all those restrictions, and looks like it'd be a lot easier to keep that vineyard. But old Naboth didn't even have to pray about it. He said, "O king, it's not for sale. For money, or another vineyard or any other offer you want to make. It's not for sale. God forbid that I should lose the inheritance of my fathers. He wasn't going to sell out for any price. And brethren, I think that's the way we ought to get it settled. Our inheritance is not for sale. It's come to us at great cost. We dare not sell out for any price. Now, it cost Naboth something. In fact, it cost him everything. It cost him his life. They started a scandal on him. They told lies about him. But they didn't smear his name. He still stands tall and strong and stalwart to challenge every one of us to stay true and don't sell out the inheritance. Oh, let's keep the landmarks in place. Let's not get over on somebody else's property, but let's stay right in there where God says, this is the place for you. Doesn't matter what somebody else does. We know this is the place that God has for us. You know, one of the saddest scriptures in all the Bible to me is in Nehemiah chapter 13, where Israel had intermarried with the Ammonites and the Moabites, which God had forbidden. And you know, it's one thing if our action destroys us spiritually, but it's another thing when it destroys our children and our posterity. One of the saddest verses in all of the Bible is this. It says there in Nehemiah 13 that the children spake half in the language of Ashdod and did not know the Jews' language. I think that's a commentary on today. It seems like a lot of our young people know the baseball stars and the football players more than they know the patriarchs of the faith. Oh, friend, when we start drifting toward the world and selling out toward the world, it isn't long till our children are lost to the old-fashioned way. Now, in closing tonight, I'd like to mention what does it mean if we move the landmarks. 4 things that it means if we move the landmarks. Number 1, it means we disregard the wisdom of our forefathers. For it says the landmarks which they of old time have set. Why is it that some are wanting to go a different way? Are we more spiritual now than our fathers were? Have we got new light from the Word and understand the leadership of the Spirit more? No, my friend, 1,000 times no. That's not the reason, people. They are questioning the wisdom of our forefathers and our spiritual leaders. It's serious to do that. Fixed boundaries and fixed laws are to be kept sacredly for a succeeding generation. They are not relics of the past. They are guides for our future. And it's serious if we disregard the wisdom of our forefathers. Number 2, it means we violate a law of God because God made it clear and he repeated it time after time. Remove not the ancient landmarks. God set the boundaries for Israel and allotted their lands, and they were to be held in trust for future generations. And removal of the landmark was a direct insult to the authority of God. And when we start moving them, we are insulting the God who set them. Number 3, if we move the landmarks, we defraud our neighbors. You see, if one of those landmarks was a stone there at the end of the field, and it was time for spring plowing, and as you came by the stone, you just kind of pushed it a little bit, probably no one would even notice. And maybe you came back for the fall plowing and moved it just a little bit more. And the next year rolled around and you did the same thing. It's not long till you're out of your own territory onto somebody else's territory, and you're defrauding your neighbor. And friend, there's another way in which we defraud our neighbor. Even though they don't have a lot of time for our religion, they know how holy people ought to live. And you disappoint them when you compromise the truth that they know is held sacred. Number 4, if we remove the landmarks, it exposes us to a direct curse from God, because one of the verses I read is, "Cursed be he that removeth his neighbor's landmark." And I want to emphasize there's a truth to be believed, there's a duty to be performed, there's a standard to be held, and we expose ourselves to a curse if we fail to do it. Now finally tonight, I want to ask one last question, and at least partially answer the same. When is there a special danger of the landmarks being moved? Could you stand about 6 or 8 of them? I'll give a few of them at least. Number 1, when there's a transition in leadership, there's a special danger of the landmarks being moved. And that's whether we're talking about a pastor in a local church, or a leader in a general conference, or some other area that you might want to mention. Friend, I've been astounded at how quick a congregation can change when the leadership in that local church changes. The Bible speaks about a time when there arose a Pharaoh that knew not Joseph, and things changed. Number 2, when is there danger of moving the landmarks? When men of shallow spiritual experience are placed in influential positions. It's not long till the landmark is moved. Number 3, when a pastor or a pastor's wife fails to take a clear stand on issues of separation from the world, it's not long till the landmark is removed. And could I say something to you precious wives tonight? The holy standards that you maintain has a greater influence on that congregation of people than the preaching of your pastor husband does. If you want some proof of that, and I hope you don't, you let one pastor's wife trim her hair and start going the worldly way, it won't be 30 days till that congregation is shown the tragedy of moving the landmarks. I appreciate you precious ladies tonight. And there's nothing more beautiful in God's universe than a holy woman that maintains a chaste and modest demeanor and dress. It's one of God's greatest blessings to this universe. Don't ever tuck your head, lady. Thank God for holy women. I praise God for you tonight. Blessed be his name. Then I'll just mention one last thing. When we as holiness people fail to hold the standard in our own homes, it's not long till the landmarks are moved. You can often tell what a preacher really believes by looking at his wife and children more than looking at him. And I know, friend, I don't want to be unfair. I know that when our children are gone from home, we don't always know what they're going to do. I've suffered one of the keenest disappointments of all my life this year. But while they were in our home, there was a holiness standard for the girls and the boys. And I'd just like to exhort you, my precious brothers and sisters, let's keep the landmarks in place. Let's stay on the territory that God has for us till one day we can receive the inheritance that God has prepared for them that love and serve him. God bless you.